Who taught you to recognize yourself in the mirror? I'm serious. You were maybe 18 months old. Someone pointed at your reflection and said your name, and something clicked. You became the person staring back. But here's the thing, before that moment, you existed without that recognition. You were alive, aware, moving through the world. Then someone programmed you to see yourself as separate as you. That's not philosophy. That's conditioning. Your identity, everything you think makes you uniquely you, was installed, like software. And you're running programs right now that someone else wrote. Think about your name for a second. The sound waves that make people turn their heads when called across a room. You didn't choose it. Someone assigned it before you could speak. And now it feels like the most intimate part of your existence. You feel it. When someone says your name, something lights up inside. That's trained. You were conditioned to respond to that acoustic pattern as if it were your essence. But it's just a sound. Every time someone used your name, they reinforced the program. Good boy, Sarah. Jessica, come here. Michael, don't do that. Thousands of repetitions. Stimulus, response. Pavlov's dogs salivated at bells. You respond to syllables. And somewhere along the way, you forgot you were being trained. You started believing the sound was actually you. Now let me ask you something else. What do you want? No, really, what do you want right now, in this moment, reading this? Maybe you want this to be interesting. Maybe you want to learn something. Maybe you want to feel smart for understanding it. But here's the uncomfortable question. Is that want yours? Or did someone teach you to want that? You've been rewarded for certain desires your entire life. Gold stars for wanting to learn, praise for wanting to help others, money for wanting to work hard, shame for wanting the wrong things. And gradually, imperceptibly, you started policing your own wants, editing them before they fully formed. You don't even know what you want anymore because the voice that asks, "What do I want?" has already been captured by the conditioning system. The voice in your head right now, the one narrating your thoughts, that's not your original voice. That's an internalized chorus of everyone who ever told you who you should be. Your parents' warnings, your teacher's corrections, your friends' judgments, society's expectations, all of it compressed into what feels like your internal monologue. But it's them speaking through you, to you. Identity is a control mechanism. I don't mean that conspiratorially. There's no shadowy group in a room deciding who you'll become. The mechanism is distributed. It's everywhere. It's your family, your school, your job, your Netflix algorithm, your Instagram feed, the news you consume, the conversations you overhear, all of it constantly broadcasting what's acceptable, what's normal, what's you, and you absorb it. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Because your brain is a pattern recognition machine designed to fit in with the tribe. Survival used to depend on it. Get exiled from the group. You died. So your nervous system evolved to be exquisitely sensitive to social feedback, to adjust yourself, to become whatever version of you gets accepted. That mechanism is still running. But now the tribe is 8 billion people, and the feedback is instantaneous, and the acceptable range of identity is narrower than ever. Let me give you something concrete. Think about your job, whatever you do for money. Now think about who you are at work, the persona you inhabit, the tone you use in emails, the way you laugh at jokes that aren't funny, the opinions you express and the ones you don't. That's not you, that's the you that gets paid, the you that doesn't get fired, the you that receives positive reinforcement from the system. And over time, that work you starts bleeding into the rest of your life. You can feel it, can't you? The way you talk to your partner starts sounding like a performance review. The way you describe your weekend sounds like a LinkedIn post. Your personality is colonized by economic conditioning. You became employee-shaped because being employee-shaped put food on your table. But here's where it gets interesting. You probably don't experience that as conditioning. You experience it as being professional, as maturity, as growing up. See how the system names itself? The most sophisticated forms of control don't feel like control. They feel like virtue, like progress, like becoming your best self. The conditioning works best when you think you chose it, when you believe the prison is actually freedom, your politics. Did you choose them, or did you grow up in a context that made certain political positions feel obvious, natural, correct? And did you then seek out information that confirmed those positions? And did you surround yourself with people who share them, and did you learn to identify yourself by them? I'm a progressive. I'm a conservative. As if a political position is an identity rather than a temporary stance on complex problems. You're not your politics, but you've been conditioned to think you are, because when your identity is tied to a position, you'll defend it like you're defending your life. You'll go to war over it, you'll dismiss evidence, you'll demonize people who disagree, not because the position is that important, because your sense of self is at stake. That's the genius of ideological conditioning. It doesn't just give you beliefs, it makes the beliefs feel like you. Let's go deeper. Your preferences, the food you like, the music you listen to, the clothes you wear. How much of that is actually your taste? And how much is a performance of the identity you've been conditioned to inhabit? You like certain bands because liking them signals something about who you are to other people. You hate certain foods because hating them is part of your identity narrative. I'm not a person who eats that. Your preferences are identity maintenance. They're not about pleasure or pain, they're about staying consistent with the character you've been trained to play. And you know this. On some level, you know this. But knowing doesn't change it. That's the wild part. You can see the conditioning and still be controlled by it. Because the conditioning isn't just intellectual, it's somatic. It's in your body, in your nervous system, in your gut reactions, and your instant judgments, and your reflexive emotions. Someone insults your identity. You feel it physically. Your chest tightens, your face flushes, your heart rate increases. That's not you choosing to be offended, that's a programmed response. Stimulus response, like touching a hot stove. Automatic. And once the response is automatic, once it's below conscious awareness, you're not choosing your behavior anymore. You're enacting a script written by every experience that shaped you, every punishment and reward, every approval and rejection. You think you're making decisions, but decision-making requires options, and you can only choose from the options your conditioning allows you to see. You're choosing from a menu you didn't write, in a restaurant you didn't pick, in a neighborhood you were born into. Free will becomes a complicated question when you realize this. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something that surprised you? Not something random or impulsive, something that genuinely contradicted your sense of who you are. Can you even remember? Most people can't, because most people stay within the narrow bandwidth of behavior their identity allows. You've been conditioned so thoroughly that you self-regulate. You don't need external control anymore. You are the control. You're the prison and the prisoner. This isn't pessimism. This is just description. And description is the first step to something else. Because once you see the conditioning, once you really see it, something shifts. Not immediately, not dramatically, but there's a crack. A small space between the stimulus and the response, between what you've been taught to do and what you might actually choose. That space is where you actually live. Not the performed identity, not the conditioned responses, but the awareness that notices the conditioning. The part of you that just realized what I'm pointing at. That's closer to what you actually are. But even that gets tricky, because the moment you try to identify with that awareness, you're creating another identity, another program. I'm the aware person. I'm the conscious observer. I'm the one who sees through conditioning. And now you're back in the loop. Another role, another performance. So what do you do with this? I don't know. I'm not here to give you steps. There are no steps. Steps would be more conditioning. Do this, become that. Same mechanism, different content. What I'm suggesting is that you just look. Keep looking. Not to fix anything, not to improve anything, just to see clearly what's actually happening. Who taught you to sit the way you're sitting right now? Someone did. That posture, that's learned. You weren't born sitting like that. You were trained to sit like that through years of subtle and not so subtle feedback. Sit up straight, don't slouch, cross your legs. Be professional. And now you do it automatically. You don't even notice. Same with how you're processing these words. You're reading in a certain way, at a certain speed, with a certain internal commentary running. Is this true? Do I agree? What does this mean? That's learned too. You were taught to read critically, to evaluate, to form opinions. And now that's just how reading feels to you. But it's not reading, it's performing the role of educated person reading something. Everything is like this. Your relationships, the way you love, the way you fight, the way you apologize, all of it choreographed by invisible conditioning. You learned what love looks like from movies and songs and watching your parents. You learned what anger is allowed and what isn't. You learned which emotions are acceptable to express and which ones make you unacceptable. And then you started having authentic emotions that perfectly matched the script. See the problem? Even your rebellion is conditioned. When you rejected your parents' values, you probably did it in predictable ways. You adopted the identity of rebel. But rebel is still an identity. Still a program, just a different one. Same mechanism, different costume. The counterculture of the 60s? Conditioned. The dropouts, the hippies, the revolutionaries, all of them running scripts too. They thought they were breaking free, but they were just switching from one conditioning system to another, from mainstream to alternative. But alternative is still conditioning. It's just conditioning that sells itself as freedom. This is what I mean when I say identity is a control mechanism. It doesn't matter what the identity is, conformist or rebel, traditional or transgressive. The moment you identify as something, you're locked in. You have to maintain that identity, defend it, perform it, and that performance is the cage. You can see it in how people talk about themselves. I'm not the kind of person who fill in the blank. That sentence is a limitation wearing the costume of identity. You just told yourself what you can't do, what's off limits, what would contradict the story you tell about who you are. And you'll arrange your entire life around maintaining that story. You'll avoid experiences that might challenge it. You'll filter information that contradicts it. You'll surround yourself with people who confirm it, not because you're dishonest, because maintaining identity coherence is a fundamental human drive. We need the story to hold together. If it falls apart, we fall apart. But what if falling apart is exactly what needs to happen? Not in some dramatic breakdown sense, but in a gentle, ongoing questioning. What if you stop trying to be consistent? Stop trying to maintain a coherent identity, just for a moment, just to see what happens. You'd probably feel anxious, unmoored, like you're disappearing. That anxiety is the conditioning defending itself. The system has an immune response. When you start questioning your identity, something kicks in to pull you back, to remind you who you are, to stabilize the story. But what if you sat with that anxiety instead of running from it? What if you let yourself be inconsistent, contradictory, unrecognizable? Who would you be if you weren't constantly trying to be someone? This is not a rhetorical question. Sit with it. Who would you be if you stopped performing identity, if you stopped maintaining the character, if you let go of the need to be recognized as you? You don't know. And that not knowing is terrifying, because your entire psychological infrastructure is built on knowing who you are. Your identity is your operating system. Without it, how would you make decisions? How would you know what to want? How would you interact with others? But here's the thing. That terror is conditioned too. You were taught to be terrified of losing yourself. You were taught that identity dissolution is dangerous, is death, is madness. But is it? Or is that just what the conditioning system tells you to keep you in line? Every mystical tradition points to some version of ego death as liberation. Every psychedelic experience that goes deep enough encounters it, the dissolution of the subject-object boundary, the collapse of identity. And people come back from that describing it as the most profound experience of their lives, not as loss, as recognition, as remembering what they were before they became someone. I'm not telling you to dissolve your ego. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just pointing at something and asking if you can look at it without immediately trying to fix it or use it or turn it into another identity. Can you see your conditioning without trying to decondition yourself? Can you notice the programs without installing a new program called Awakened Person Who Sees Conditioning? Can you watch the machinery without becoming someone who watches machinery? This is the razor's edge, because the mind is so quick. The moment you see something, it wants to become the seer. The moment you understand something, it wants to identify as the understander. The conditioning system is that fast. It co-opts everything, even awareness of conditioning. So maybe the point isn't to escape conditioning. Maybe you can't. Maybe the conditioning is too deep, too pervasive, too fundamental to human social existence. Maybe trying to escape it is just another trap. Or maybe, and this is where it gets interesting, maybe you can be conditioned and know you're conditioned simultaneously. Maybe you can play the role and know it's a role. Maybe you can have an identity and hold it lightly enough that it doesn't have you. What would that look like? Living without the conviction that you are the character you play? Participating in social reality without believing in it completely? Performing your identity while remembering it's a performance? It would look like fluidity, like adaptability, like irony in the deep sense, not sarcasm, but the ability to hold two contradictory things at once. I am this, I am not this. Both true simultaneously. You'd stop defending yourself so rigidly, because there'd be less self to defend. You'd stop taking things so personally, because you'd remember that the person taking offense is a construct. You'd be able to change your mind without it feeling like death, because your identity wouldn't be fused with your opinions. You'd be free, sort of. As free as a conditioned being can be, which is maybe the only freedom that exists. But even this, everything I just said, could become another identity, another prison. I'm the fluid person who holds identity lightly. And we're back where we started. There's no escape. Only degrees of awareness. Only varying levels of distance between you and your conditioning. Some days you're completely lost in it. You are your identity, fully. Other days you catch glimpses. You see the machinery. You remember it's all constructed. Those glimpses are enough. You don't need constant awareness. You can't maintain it anyway. But once you've seen it, you can't completely unsee it. The conditioning continues, but there's a knowing, a witnessing, a small space of freedom that wasn't there before. And maybe that's all I'm offering. Not liberation, not transformation, not a new identity to replace the old one. Just a brief moment of seeing clearly. Just enough distance from your conditioning to remember you're not it. Not completely, not finally. You're reading this right now. These words are entering your awareness. And somewhere in there, beneath the analytical mind, beneath the identity that's evaluating whether this is right or wrong, useful or useless, true or false, somewhere beneath all that, something is recognizing itself. Not as a self, but as the space in which selves appear. Can you feel it? That quiet awareness that's been here the whole time? That's not conditioned. That can't be conditioned, because it's prior to conditioning. It's what's aware of the conditioning. You can't grasp it. The moment you try, you're conditioning again, creating another identity called awareness or consciousness or true self. But you can notice it. You can return to it. Not as a practice, not as a technique, just as what's already here when you stop trying to be someone for a moment. That's what I'm pointing at. Not a destination, not an achievement, not something to become, just what you already are when you're not busy being you. And you're free to ignore all of this, free to dismiss it, free to go back to your life exactly as it was. The conditioning will continue either way. You'll keep being you, keep performing your identity, keep living inside the story you've been telling yourself since you first recognized yourself in that mirror. But now there's a question mark next to it, a small uncertainty, a crack in the foundation. And that crack is where the light gets in.